Good day, ladies and gentlemen. And we're here. Well, that kind of fucked up. Off to a bad start. Can't even get the good day out. Good day. We are here to play some more Doom 2016 and hopefully maybe finish the game, although I'm not sure how much more we have to go. I'm, of course, joined by...
Riddick.
Yeah, so we're just talking about Warhammer 40k and Slaaneshi demons and the sweet, sweet pincer handjobs. Just make sure you have a lot of lube.
And the fact that they've got something silicone over said pincers. Otherwise, yeah, it's not going to last long.
It's going to be very painful, unless you're like a Khornate demon, and then maybe it's like made out of stone. Or some sort of demonic adamantium.
Yeah, they're more into brass, but it'll work.
See, like the cheap demons or steel case. That's the best I got it. Oh wait, it's still early, and I actually got sleep. And hello, Nick M. I remember this boss being somewhat difficult. Somewhat. This was definitely one of their more unique-looking designs, but ultimately doesn't have much character. I'm quite looking forward to Doom Eternal's boss design, though, because they definitely... Now that this game was successful, they actually let id Software do something different. Well, current id. I don't know if I really consider them id Software or not, because they're not really. It's a whole...
It's just a name by now. Now, they're just still doing good work, which, you know, is almost up there with what the old id was capable of, and to that I'll laud them. But it's not the same. I mean, you don't have the Carmax. You don't have a lot of the old staff. You don't have any of the old staff, actually. American McGee certainly isn't there.
How does a kid get a name American McGee, though? I mean, I feel bad for that. I feel bad for his schooling, because that could not be fun.
It was the early 70s / late 60s.
Eventually I got to do a stream on Alice. I've never actually played the entire game, but I do know about it, and it looks kind of interesting.
Hey, Tech.
I never really cared that much about Alice in Wonderland and stuff like that. This was never my thing.
Always enjoyed it. It was never like something I was really big into.
Well, I did write a random fanfic about Wizard of Oz once, which I'm glad no longer exists because it's shit. And historically inaccurate on top of that. Not that I knew that at the time. Okay, so stick with me, ladies and gentlemen. What you've got... It was a rip-off... Okay, it's a rip-off of The Lost Regiment, except exchange main regulars with... some Texas militiamen going to the Land of Oz and taking down a demonic Wizard of Oz.
No, so closer to 2. Closer to Return to Oz.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, with the little wheeler thing. I always forget about that. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was actually
so
a fairly...
Disney, deliberately.
Oh, that was Disney, wasn't it? That's creepy. That's kind of crazy to think that Disney wasn't always family friendly.
Yeah, it's growing up. Disney used to be awesome. Now they're just horrible mountain of suck.
Yeah, it happens. But yeah, you had some Confederates armed with Dryson needle rifles. I didn't realize that as an 1860s that was still a state secret. It's one of those things where it was like, why didn't they export them? It was like the most advanced rifle of all time, except for the Henry.
It's because basically it's like the CIA's Doe gun. It's not exactly deer gun to be precise. It's spelled D-E-A-R.
Because poor literacy is cool. I like that one meme that Linkara did.
It's not poor literacy. It's not poor literacy. You're not hunting with that.
You never know. You might if you surprise him. He's coming right at us. Let's see. Cousin named Lycan. Wow. Does he have long hair? Kind of hilarious beard, mustache combo, and can he turn into a werewolf? Unless it says Lucian, and that's still the same thing. You might as well just... That might as well just be, young adult romance lead.
Ugh. And tech, every state in the nation's a 2A battleground.
I kind of like how in the latest in-range Q&A, it's like, well, pretty much every government in Europe hates guns. It's just to the extent of that hatred. You know, they can.
They want to retain their power. So, what do you do to retain power? You disarm the populace. You can't have a rebellion if they can't fight back.
That's the one thing about people with like sociopathy and stuff like that. If they just, you know, they could have more power if they just left people alone, you know, and control things from behind the scenes.
They don't realize that. In fact, they don't want that. They want all the power, and they want it now.
And yes, Texas is a battleground. Although I don't know how well that's going to work out for old Bloomberg, seeing as how he already dropped out of the presidential race. Do anything against it? There's not really much to do but vote.
Buy ammo, support your local gun shop.
I did both of that today. And Magpul is technically in Texas now. Although they used to be in Colorado until that mag ban they came up with. I hate bosses with shields. That's why I waited for a whole nother episode. Okay, let's go ahead and try to use... I already wasted my... Actually, you know what? Just kill me, dude. No, I don't actually have to let him kill me. I'll just reload.
Say this, right now, Magpul's even coming out with Oakley tier sunglasses. Really good stuff.
See, that's the thing about Magpul that's kind of funny, though. Like, they make really high-quality mags, but also sunglasses and wallets and other things of that nature. The Magpul wallet. Your credit card won't jam when you try to get it out.
I think I'll stick with my gator skin wallet.
That gives you plus 20 epicness points.
It's just really tough. I've had it for ages.
I've just had some random Chinese cheapo for the last decade. It beats the one I had before that, which was bright green. Which was made out of some kind of nylon. But hey, it worked! It kept my all of $2 safe. And then now these days nobody even really uses cash anymore.
Depends. I'll carry it on hand because, well, there's some things you don't exactly want a history for. Legal things, mind you, but still things you don't want history for.
Yeah. Like, silicone sleeves for the demonettes.
But I'm dish. 55-gallon drum of lube.
The less said about that, the better.
I didn't say it was for personal use. It just
the cake is oil. Tennessee constitutional carry. Okay, I'll be right back. Be entertaining.
Yeah, we're trying for constitutional carry in Louisiana as well. Don't know if it'll pass, but we're giving it our best.
Okay, and I'm back. It's barely cold, and the heater's on. Alright, so on a Doom-related note, ladies and gentlemen, I've currently been rereading the classic Doom novelizations. I gotta say, those books have held up remarkably well. If you've never read them, give them a chance. Do not think they're a bunch of crazy crap like the Doom comic. The Doom comic's great on its own merits, but surprisingly, the Doom novelizations are actually pretty good literature. It's surprising how well the characters are done and how well it gets the horror across. But they're also very 90s. Very 90s. And I love it. It might as well take place in an alternate 1990s with better space travel. Because they're still using Humvees and Bradley fighting vehicles, which I highly doubt would exist in, like, the 2100s. I'd hope they'd have something a little better than that.
Well, we've already switched out away from the Humvee, except for radio work and things like that. As for the Bradley, I don't know. He can up-armor him pretty well.
But over a century?
Hey, it beats Contra. We were still using freaking UH-1 Hueys and, you know, Super Contra, which takes place in the 2500s.
I don't know, I'd rather have a Huey than a Humvee, though. Just saying. That Humvee's
actual
really
military Humvees are pretty good.
But they're so small, though. I didn't know how small they were until I actually saw one in real life. You look at the interior, it's like, that's even smaller than, like, my car is bigger than that on the inside.
Yeah, it's cramped on the inside. I will give you that. But yeah, overall, they drive pretty well.
It seems like all military vehicles are designed to be as uncomfortable as possible, though.
No, you have to give leeway to up-armoring and for the actual motor. It's not designed for crew comfort.
I'll say. This is not as bad as the Panzer I. I actually saw the interior of one of those in a video. That thing... Yeah, go into battle with that. People could be shooting at you. You've got, like, one tiny little bit of armor. Good luck! And Flint Taggart is a surprise... Wait, go on.
I was going to say it beats the Ferret armored vehicle.
I think that thing probably had like not even 1 centimeter, 1 millimeter of armor.
Yeah, it was enough to stop small arms fire. It still kind of is, but that's about it. And it's very cramped. It's about like driving a early VW Bug in terms of space.
See, I always kind of like the VW Bug, but the modern ones are vastly superior.
They also don't suffer from Hitler's revenge. Now, if you ever find an old VW Bug for, potential advice, if you ever plan on buying it, replace the fuel line. Don't even think about it. Just replace the fuel line.
Was that made out of like some really cheap tubing?
It was made out of a cloth tubing. Unfortunately, it just always rots.
Cloth? I thought it was like some really low quality rubber, but cloth? Holy shit!
You can get cloth tubing to work, but the problem is the type that they used just wasn't good.
Still, I wouldn't really want to trust cloth tubing.
Well, hey, you joke, but we can make cloth tubing which is completely rot-proof.
Hit it!
Fire-resistant, completely rot-proof, completely devoid of any flaws. We've come a long way.
Yeah, I never would have thought cloth tubing would actually be worth a damn. Aha! Blast him! Give me all that sweet, sweet health!
And some of the same tech we use in making parachute cord. You stick a piece of parachute cord out in the wet, the cold, the nasty, for 20 years. I guarantee it'll never mildew.
Huh. Shit. This boss is annoying.
And tech, it's... Essentially, they're trying to change the 4473. We still have to, send petitions, send out information to stop them from changing it.
Yeah, it's going to be a big Supreme Court thing, I guarantee you on that. Okay, let's try this with... Try to get the timing down right on here. Instead of just fucking up terribly. I would blame being tired, but I actually have sleep. But yeah, back to the Doom novelizations. It's surprisingly... The characters are surprisingly good. It's really quite annoying to try to find a good military science fiction book that actually has legitimate characters that aren't just, dude bro wants to join the Spec Marines, and he does, and goes through training. If I've mentioned this in a wide variety of streams. I cannot tell you how many times I've read the same plot of dude bro joins the Marines, goes through his training, and the training is tough, but eventually he fights the bad guys and they do the things. And it's like, my God, come up with something a little more original. It's just...
Well, it's like they never read Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
You can have characters.
It's like... That's like the quintessential military science fiction book, but it actually has, more of a plot than just dude bro. I think the dumbest one I ever read was one about a guy named literally Spartan. His name was Spartan, and they were taking this 100% seriously. And of course, the military's corrupt and the government's bad, and it's like, only Spartan can save them now. And they got multiple trilogies out of that. And it's like, my God. The one thing I really hate about military science fiction today is their preoccupation with minutia. It's like, and he was an E3, and you can't do this as an E6. It's like, okay, but is this actually serving the plot? Is it serving the character, or are you just showing off that you can read? As in, like, you can read the different military designations. It's more like they're trying to show their, you know, designation cred than anything else. And it is most aggravating.
Hey, Victor.
And hello.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, Sweden! I've always wanted to visit there. And I've never owned a PSA AR-15, sadly. I'm not really a big fan of
using their parts, and I have sold a few, so yeah, I will claim they are good. Though, if you can, if it's within your budget, go ahead and spring to get the FN barrel. Those are really nice.
Because FN is awesome.
It's mainly down to their machine gun steel. I will warn you this, if you plan on accessorizing, i.e. changing out handguards, yeah, they torque their barrel nuts on tight. So I've ruined a cheapo tool trying to get one off. Now the Magpul barrel wrench tool will handle it, but the El Cheapo Tapco ain't up to the task.
No, I've ruined a cheapo tool once trying to get one off. But, you know, you just gotta pick the right stuff. That's a sex joke. That's why it's funny. Laugh, damn it, laugh! I'm not lame. But, sex jokes aside, I can attest to the quality of the PSA AK, though. They're quite excellent, so long as you use proper magazines. And the Croat steels are not really very good. Like, they're pretty crap. I've never had a magazine jam on me before, and one did today. Like, it literally jammed. It's like, that's the weirdest thing to ever have happen.
That's why we practice sports.
So, it's like, I would honestly recommend Magpul mags. I mean, yeah, the original, you know, like, steel military ones are always probably the best, but I wasn't able to find any of those, to be perfectly honest. Well, for a reasonable price, let's say. And I'm not paying $30 for a magazine. Come on, come on, come on. No! Haha!
And Kubota, you're not going to notice the difference on AR. Unless you have well over 25,000 rounds worth of training on the M4, the M16, you're really not going to notice the difference between accuracy of a chrome-lined hammer-forged barrel and a nitrided button-cut rifle.
I think it'll only really be that big of a deal for like really, really long-range shooting, which, depending on where you live, that's not even something you can even really do.
Well, it is for long-range shooting, but for short range, we're talking you have to be almost bench rest levels of good to be able to notice the difference.
Yeah, it's no real practical concern.
Sort of. It just depends on, number one, your level of training, and number two, your intended role. If your intended role is to punch one ragged hole at 300 yards, I would honestly say save up. As much as I like the PSA, skip the PSA and go to PRI and pick up either a Mark 12 Mod 0 or a Mod Holland.
See, I don't even have access to a 300-yard range, so all that would be lost on me. Not that it really matters. Because if I'm going to shoot 300 yards, I'm just going to use the Garand.
Yeah, if the Joint Service pistol trials were held today, the M9 would still beat the Glock 17 in terms of sheer durability. I'm not knocking Glock, because they could be made well, but there's ways to break Glock that will not do anything to an M9.
And let's not forget, the Beretta 92 was able to take something like 3,000... No, was it 3 or 30,000? It was some ridiculously high number.
Rounds.
Before breaking. And I think that was like the Super Plus P stuff, too.
Yeah, it was Plus P Plus ammunition, which thankfully we've gotten away from, because, you know, near to proof loads, if not proof loads, is kind of retarded.
So, yeah, I mean, that's one of those things where that's just insane.
Now, Beretta has just recently done the pistol durability trials test again, just for giggles and to prove that, hey, guess what? It still does it.
Mm. And that is Beretta. And if they still...
The only more tested handguns outside of it, P226 and 228, now the 229, is the USP and Mark 23. It's the only pistols more durable.
And even then, more durable, it's like, what, 50,000 versus 30,000 or some ridiculous number like that?
Well, it's more than that. The fact that they intentionally have wedged bullets within the barrel of bows and fired them out just fine.
That's approaching Arasaka levels of insanely overbuilt. Now, one thing I want to mention about this level here is on my old PC, it would crank down to about 40 FPS. Like, I don't know what it is about this level, but on my older PC, it would always lag to 40 FPS.
They got a lot of lighting going on.
It's still just a basic arena though, but
it is a basic arena, but you have a lot of object source lighting.
Yeah, I guess there's kind of
all those vectors have to be calculated.
Way to go, Ryzen, indeed. It's like, it's a fairly decent looking arena. I always like the more tech-basy looking things anyway. Hey, isn't there supposed to be something wrong with the SIG that the military went with? Like, it's not drop safe?
It's been changed. The ones that the military were presented with didn't have any problems. The ones the civilians were being presented with did. They changed the design for the civilian model, so it's in spec with the M17 and M18.
That's kind of weird that they would change it. Well, since it's a pistol, I can't imagine they'd have to change too much from the military design to the civilian one. Just because, well, it's not select fire, so.
It's mostly the hammer and sear, striker and sear engagement on this the fire control group. It's not that hard.
Yeah. See,
as for replacing the 1911 with the Desert Eagle, never going to happen. As an ex-owner of a Desert Eagle, and I probably will buy it again, to be fair. It filled my fridge pretty well, but that's all it's meant for. It's a hunting handgun. It will not stand the rigors of duty.
And, of course, you would know that from a number of video games where evidently the Desert Eagle is the service pistol, apparently.
For what it is, it's very low recoil. And remember, you are pumping out either 44 Magnum, 37 Magnum, or 50 AE. Those are not exactly light recoiling rounds.
Well, don't forget, Leon Kennedy in the Resident Evil 2 novelization, his service weapon was supposed to be a 50 AE Desert Eagle. Why? I do not know.
What was he going to Wildlife and Fisheries? Because, you know, our Wildlife and Fisheries issues 357 SIG for that.
Because it's like, RPD must be taking on some... God damn it. Must be taking on liquors on a regular basis, because, damn. The book even addresses, like, him trying to find ammo for that thing. He has to go to, like, the, what was it, Kindo's gun shop. It's like, surely somebody must have bought one of these. It's like, dude, it's 1998. How many people are going to have a 50 AE Desert Eagle?
You'd be surprised. They were selling pretty popular back then, but it was still just a hunting handgun.
See, like, that's such a, I won't say a lame excuse, but at the same time, it's like, who is being fooled with, yeah, I'm going to go hunting with the Desert Eagle, totally. That's why I bought it.
Actually, yeah, it was too expensive to be a cheap pimp gun. It's not intended for any form of defense, and it's actually pretty good at, killing deer. So if you don't want to carry a large, heavy rifle, you can carry a large, heavy pistol.
I know, but even like, when you say that, though, it's like, yeah, you don't want to carry one of those large, heavy, 7-pound rifles. I'm instead going to carry a 5-pound pistol. It's the weight
Oh,
thing.
no, hunting rifles back then weren't 7 pounds. They were. This was the era of wood stocks and heavy blued steel. Sporter profile was there, but sporter profile doesn't matter when your stock is, heavy burl walnut.
Okay, then maybe, but I don't know. It just seems like that's a flimsy justification at best. I mean, it's a cool gun. Don't get me wrong. A 50 caliber semi-auto, but still, it's like.
Well, back then the big seller was 44. 50 caliber was brought in with the late Mark 7, early Mark 19, and I'll admit I liked it, but the big advent around 98 was, hey, we got 41 Action Express, which was not a bad round, but it went nowhere.
Yeah, because I've never even heard of it. To get on Forgotten Weapons, the 41 Action Express. But I'm playing on Hurt Me Plenty for this.
And Tech, it's military designation per class of item. M14 was the 14th trialed item. So, M14. Such as M16, 16th trialed item.
And
it's for that classification.
And speaking of the M14, that actually reminds me more of Doom. I'm reading the Hell on Earth novelization, which also is pretty good. Well, actually, I would say it's more than pretty good. It's actually a decent piece of literature on its own. It actually touches on concepts of religion, people who follow religion. It also touches on some other high-level concepts as well, which is kind of surprising from a book about a game where you shoot monsters in the face. It's weird. That's the best way to put it. Because one minute you got Flynn Taggart shooting a demon in the face with a double barrel, and that's also a 90s thing in and of itself. Because like if I'm going up against the demonic apocalypse, well technically they're aliens, but whatever, I would much rather have a select fire rifle instead of a double barreled shotgun. But in the 90s, I guess a double barreled shotgun was still considered a viable combat weapon, which I guess it kind of is, but still.
It depends. It was mainly rule of cool, I will give you that, but 2 rounds of buckshot to anything at close range generally is going to leave 2 fist-size holes.
And it is Flynn Taggart. He doesn't need an AR or an AK. Now, with that in mind, though, the book also talks about how the AK could knock somebody down due to the recoil. It's like, no, 7.62 is not that powerful.
There's one AK that could, but it's, definitely not the AKM. It's going to be one of the designated marksman variants, or the, 7.62 by 5.1, 7.62 Russians,
5.4.
Ultimate brain fart! 7.62 by 5.4 Russian Saiga. In which case, if you're off balance already, it could knock you on your butt.
But not 3.9, though. I also find it funny the AK exists in the Doom universe, but the AR-15 does not. It's called the AR-19. For some reason.
No. They could have come up with a 19th revision as opposed to... Because remember, at about that time, it wasn't until 93 that the SR-25 was made, and Eugene Stoner came up with that name because Stoner rifle, let's combine the 15 and the 10.
And also it's sort of like an alternate history, alternate 90s thing where most of the technology is the same except they've got space travel, so it could happen. And besides, it's not even the U.S. service rifle. The Sig Cow is, which is a pistol caliber carbine that also has a bayonet lug on it. And yes, Flynn Taggart in the novels does get to rip and tear with a bayonet. Which actually, I'm going to have to mention this in the review, but that actually was in one of the alphas of Doom, where you could get a bayonet, which was another melee weapon. It's
they took it out basically because they just wanted to. It's like, okay, that's one more thing we got to program. Let's focus on making good foundation first.
Yeah, it's not even really that necessary. I'm sure there's a mod that adds it back in anyway.
And Tech, you won't see an M0 because that can be easily confused with a first line item defense products such as the Mark 12 Mod 0, Mark 18 Mod 0, etc., ad nauseum, ad astra.
Basically, anytime the government has a designation, it's always going to be overly complicated because, well, government. And stab him!
No, Mod 0 is applied when there's a development which either alters, improves, or changes the current loadout. In which case, the original is denoted in, like, say, for the Mark 18 and Mark 12. Those were expedient-made items made by Sergeant Holland of Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane Division for the Navy SEALs. Those weren't line items. They were items that were made on spot.
And also, of course, he had a cool name. I'll never forget one of the hilarious... Well, it's not that hilarious, given the context, but it was kind of hilarious. There's a name for somebody who was a paratrooper on D-Day with the name of Pine Box. Now, how somebody gets the name of Pine Box, I do not know. I'd like to find some of the etymologies of some of these weird-ass names. That just doesn't sound like somebody just comes up with that randomly. And I am being completely pummeled by
I
this.
think there was a brigadier general by the name of France Holder, but we didn't use him to actually hold France.
Well, France
Opportunity
Holder?
lost.
How does that even happen?
I don't know, but we should have made it happen. We should have. He should have been the one in control of retaking France. Sorry, this should have happened. We were denied.
That would be pretty good. That would be pretty hilarious. See what? There's another name. Oh yeah, like what's the deal with like Hollywood actors? They get better. They get their names changed to something more marketable, but they all have boring names. I'll never forget like Edward Furlong. It's like you know that kid's not gonna have much of a career. It's like, at least my name's nice and simple. It's got a grand total of like 3 letters in it. With a very long middle name. Difficulty is my middle name. Okay, where's that goddamn Revenant wannabe? And stab up. That's not a Revenant. I mean, what the hell is that stupid thing called? Archvile. There we go. Let's see here.
And yeah, XM is pretty much shorthand. It's not officially shorthand for experimental model, but it might as well mean that because it's still in test phase.
And it's always kind of interesting when service rifles get adopted and they still have the XM moniker. You know, you could have some troubles with that.
No, because the last XM model that really got adopted was essentially, the rifle used by the Sante Raiders, and even then, we adapted the hell out of it.
And as for why machine guns are illegal, politics. That's pretty much all it is. And that's why
it's horse hockey,
among other things. Because they're not really as dangerous as people say they are, and full auto is just not really used as much as you would expect outside of video games, at least.
It's useful for heavy machine guns, general purpose machine guns, and light machine guns. It's less useful in standard routine fire of standard service rifle unless you have a very specific training regimen. I've spent a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of man hours. I even got paid for firing FA more than my extent. I've burnt out barrels. But that being said, I'll take somebody who knows what they need to know with semi-auto over somebody who doesn't quite fully know what they need to know with full auto any day of the week.
Yeah, because just turning on the fun switch, the happy switch, does not turn you into some sort of super soldier, that is for sure. I still haven't shot anything full auto myself, though. Just never really had the opportunity, although I would really like to. I think if ever I do get to shoot something full auto, I want it to be a Sturmgewehr, though. Those things look like they're really, really controllable.
SUG-44?
Yep.
I can't blame you. kind of a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah, there's a place called Drive Tanks in Texas that has one that you can rent. It's like, fuck the tank, give me the rifle.
It's cheaper and it's fun.
And besides, with the tank, it's not like you actually get to shoot it. Well, actually, no, you can shoot it, but it's not like you get to blow anything up with it. So that's the thing. Just shooting an inert shell is not good enough for me. I want to blow something up, goddammit. And now I'm on a watch list.
Legally, safely, insanely.
What's the fun with all of that? Yes, completely legal. And no, I am not Greek. According to one of the fans, evidently I must have some Swedish, and no, not Swiss ancestry. The other S country. Because Lotz is apparently common over there. And according to some documents that I've read, there was a guy named Lotz that came to Texas, actually, in the 1800s, and they called him Dutch John, and evidently he was from Switzerland. And he is long since dead, as you would expect, unless he was a vampire.
Maybe.
There's an alternate universe. John Grant was named John Slaughter. I like that universe. Although then, wouldn't Sergeant Slaughter the wrestler be named John Garand if his name was stolen?
Okay, having met quote-unquote Sergeant Slaughter, that would make things very, very different from my point of view.
Oh yeah, is he actually really tall? He kind of looks like he's... like there's some camera work for him.
Well, there's camera work for every wrestler, but he's about 6'3", or he was back then.
Sergeant Slaughter.
Now, he's built like a hoss, but yeah, he's about 6'3".
I remember his action figure had, for some reason, a lot of back fat molded in. Not very, not very, I'm trying to think of the word for some reason. Not very, God damn it. My brain is not working. You know the word. Flattering. There we go. Not the most flattering of action figures.
Well, understand that he came from an era of wrestling where it was hosses. It wasn't so much, you know, the whole, I hate to use the term roided out, but I'm going to have to because Hulk Hogan. The whole roided out, you know, big man thing really was something of the late 70s, early 80s. It really wasn't in the mid 70s. And remember, he came from the territories. He wasn't a Vince thing. He signed on to the Vince, but he was from the territories where it was the big strong men look like, you know, the big guys you'd see at a bar as opposed to somebody you'd see at Venice Beach, you know, built to the gills.
So basically real muscles versus the beach muscles.
Right, think strongman contest versus bodybuilder.
I think, didn't they, like, make Slaughter a villain at one point? I think. Or they
Not successfully. They tried to. They tried to make him a heel.
I know very little about wrestling and things of that nature. I never really got into it outside of a little bit.
Then again, they tried to make, you know, Iron Sheik a hero for a while. I was like, dude, he plays a heel so much better. It's the Iron Sheik. He's got a personality which just goes for days.
Come on, grab him! Grab him! The only problem I have with this game... God damn it! Fucking Hell Knight. Busted. And no, I've never been in the military.
Komodo, I come from a military family, although my background is civilian LEO sales of firearms. And I wanted to go military, got full reft. So I decided to say, okay, I'm going to be a crash test dummy for LEO less lethal sales and firearm sales.
Yeah, didn't you mention that you got, like, tased on multiple occasions?
Oh yeah, got tased, got pepper balled, got sting balled, got hit with some munitions. If it was a less lethal munition, I got hit with it.
Yeah, I think I'll pass. I mean... Well, here's the thing, though. Is getting tased actually painful, or is it just shut down your musculature?
Both. It's not a pleasant feeling, and removing those taser barbs is a total pain in the butt. And imagine a really bad Charlie horse Imagine that all over your body.
Okay, yeah, I guess it is kind of
That's
painful. It's always been kind of
bit
curious.
of advice for everybody listening. Don't eat Taco Bell right before you're going to be decide to go into.
Crap, shoot him!
You want to go into Elio, less lethal work, because essentially you'll get a machine gun fart that sounds like Daffy Duck.
Ouch. Nurgle would be pleased. Yeah, wrestling was more of a 80s, 90s thing because they were allowed to be more ridiculous versus... Actually, I don't know, like, what is the big guy in wrestling today? I don't even know if there even is one.
Depends on the unit. I mean, right now, WWE's trying to make Roman Reigns a thing, although John Cena is still pretty much the big thing.
But shouldn't he be getting on in years, though?
He is. But right now they don't have anybody to replace him.
Uh-oh.
Because they're pushing Roman Reigns and the crowd's not buying.
Because I know who John Cena is. I've seen some of his dubious films, like when he was trying to fight the T-1000.
I can't really say anything bad about him. He's genuinely a good guy, but I will say this. Dude needs to learn how to take a bump, otherwise by the time he gets to retirement age, man, his elbows are going to be killing him.
Yeah, I would have... Shit, okay, come on. Oh, stab her! Stab her! Well, that's kind of stabbing. It's more like just lightly bumping with the chainsaw, but whatever. It works so long as it kills it.
Chainsaw tickle.
That sounds like something that's absolutely horrible. Sounds like a fetish. It sounds like something one of the cool kids would say. Now, going back to the Doom novelization, one of the other ways it's really 90s is once the demons take over the world, spoiler alert, even though if you read the title, it's obviously not a spoiler. It's like, did they take over the Earth? No, hell on Earth, that means they just go to a feminist rally. But anyway.
Or Detroit.
That too. The Foul Xenos, because it's not demons in the Doom novelizations, are able to get all the various governments to surrender, thinking that they're going to be the ones that actually control Earth. Obviously, it doesn't work out, but the last humans alive, well, not the last humans alive, but the last human resistance is the Mormons. Now, I did remember that, but it's still just so weird. It's like, Mormons? I mean, it makes sense to a degree, but it just... And also it gets kind of 90s in that the Mormons are still seen as kind of creepy back then. These days, I don't think anybody really even cares about the Mormons at this point.
It's magical underwear, man.
And, but since it's also a 90s book, the Mormons get attacked by a combination of the various Doom monsters, zombified soldiers, and the ATF and IRS. Because back in the 90s, for those of you who weren't alive back then, the IRS was seen as like the Great Satan, which it still kind of is to this day. But the ATF was also seen as that, which it still kind of is to this day, but to a much greater degree than it is today.
That's just it. The IRS was very well armed back then, and they still are.
Which is a weird thing. Now, in the book, they say that like the IRS has like their own armored cavalry regiment, and they've got like.
They almost do. They have Bearcats.
Yeah, but in the book, they've got like tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles and shit like that.
Well, a Bearcat can compete with a Bradley AFV. Can't compete with a tank, but it can compete with a Bradley AFV.
And for those who don't know, the IRS is the United States Internal Revenue Service. I'm not really sure why they
taxman.
Why they actually need any of that, but okay. It's just kind of hilarious in that regard.
They've had a few people who didn't quite want to pay their bills.
And I just immediately threw myself off into the abyss and exploded. Went to the U.S. It was Marines. Try out, but haven't for one reason or another. Yeah, the Nier series.
And Turok, yeah, sadly Bethesda and a lot of companies like Ubisoft are pulling out of GeForce Now simply because they want to make more money, or they want to sell you the damn game you already bought.
Why am I not surprised? That's why you buy games legally all the time, right?
I mean, buy once and try to buy on a platform where you have control.
Dude Bro the movie. I pre-ordered Doom Eternal on Steam. And it's just the regular edition. Because I only pre-ordered it for one reason. Since the game is expensive, I wanted to just buy it when I actually had the money and not when I might not have it. Because, well, $60 isn't cheap. Now, thankfully, it looks like it gives me $60 worth of content, but still. I always find the pre-order bonuses really stupid, though. It's like, you have the original shotgun skin. Oh my god, a skin I never would have imagined. And then a super secret level. It's like, oh god, that feels painful. It really does. It's like, that's the best they got. I never did buy no, I'm not even gonna dignify that by saying day one DLC. I never bought the extortion that came with Mass Effect 3. Yeah, that. It's like, and they had it. And I got it at GameStop because GameStop was close by, but they had the little sheet of paper that they could scan so you could have it right there. It's like, do you want that? No, I don't even care what it is. And it turns out they cut out an entire character, fucking character,
a plot critical character,
just so they could get a little bit more money. So you spend $60, and then you got to spend another $20 on top of that to get the rest of the game. I didn't do it. I still haven't. I know who the character is, Javik, I think his name is. But I would not do it. Because that is ridiculous. It's like, imagine KOTOR, but they cut out HK-47. It's
well,
like,
the funny thing is that it gets even worse, because by the time 3 came around, it's like, oh, guess what? All your choices, they mean nothing.
oh, don't remind me. Because, yeah. Currently, I'm trying to play Dragon Age 3. It's not as egregious, but they did much. Dragon Age 3 feels very much like they're trying to do a soft reboot of Dragon Age. And I'm not really sure why.
The only thing I'll say good about Dragon Age, from my vast experience of it, is the pen and paper RPG. And nowadays it's kind of moot because you can pick up D&D 3.5, all of those books for pretty cheap.
So, I don't even really like the Dragon Age setting that much. If true, evidently Thetis is literally just the Dragon Age setting, that they couldn't come up with a better name. Now, if that doesn't show you EA, I don't know what will. But the writing in the first game was good. For a video game. See, that's interesting. You know, when it comes to, like, fantasy stuff, the books are always better, but Dragon Age 1 really kind of nailed dark fantasy. Dragon Age 3 feels way too light in some respects than Dragon Age 1. But then again, Dragon Age 1 started life back in 2004, back when games were still good. Well, games are getting better, but still.
And Rhoda, right now, nothing fancy at all. I'm running an old, socket AM3, 16 gig of RAM, and RX 480. It's not exactly mind-blowing, but for the most part, I play a lot of older games, so I've got a backlog of over 3,000 games. I'm pretty good.
My God. But are any of those 3,000 any good, though?
Most of them, yes. There are a few bad ones I choose just because they're so awful I can make fun of them, but the majority of them are some of the better games out there. I'm not even counting my console games and stuff like that, which if I do that, I'm closer to like 4,500 games. God. Eat,
sleep, play, indeed. Alright, and give it a shotty.
Well, I've been gaming for over 30 years, so...
That's why for me it's sometimes hard to go back to older games, because I need to finish the new ones. Sometimes hard to go back. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting, once you reach a certain age, go back and try to read some of your books from when you were a kid. Some of them don't hold up, and some of them do. Most of the ones I've read, currently reread have. All those Aliens books thankfully held up really well. All the Aliens books that I hated still are pretty crap, but the Steve Perry Aliens books still damn good. If you haven't read them, read them. They've been re-released in omnibus form, and they're really the only Aliens books truly worth reading. Some of the ones that were written by the other writers are interesting in terms of their plots, but often they default to the typical evil military commander or evil scientist guy. Stuff like that never made much sense. It's like, that's where it basically became more, well, since most of those books were based on comic books, comic booky, and it's kind of fitting. That is a lot of assholes. Not anymore. But the biggest problem with the... Wait, go on.
Kyle, yeah, I'm a big Mike Pondsmith fan, so I'm looking forward to 2077.
And when do you get a name like Pondsmith, though? Like, seriously. You got Mike, that makes sense, but then, oh yeah, Pondsmith. It's like, his family make ponds? Just like digging...
Don't know, but he's a damn good writer. I will say this, Cyberpunk 2020, the book, the rules are great. The art, not so much. The art, Spoonie covered is the Valley of the Cyber Dolls, which I don't know what was up with the publishing company then, but that's what they got.
They had a budget running in the tens of dollars. And they could afford action figures, and that was it. Well, dolls. For those who don't know, there's a difference.
Expensive action figures.
There's a difference between dolls and action figures. Action figures have to be 3¼ inches and fully posable, whereas dolls do not. Dolls are routinely 12 inches.
No, these are bigger than 12 inches, but they're definitely fully posable, and they're pretty expensive Japanese import figures. So I don't know why the person that was hired on for art chose that, but Mike Pondsmith's rules and setting were good.
Yeah, Bandai figures are ridiculously expensive. Like, insanely. And my build cost somewhere around $700. It was not cheap. So, yeah.
Oh no, this isn't about 2077's art style. This is about the rulebook Cyberpunk 2020. Which is now outdated because Cyberpunk Red's coming.
I would tell you that I love all your videos. Look forward to you. Well, I'm glad you like the videos, and I'm looking forward to talking about Doom Eternal. I'm going to try to get a video out on that like a week after the game comes out. I'm just going to binge through it and just do an audio video where I give my thoughts on it.
Yes, Kyle, Cyberpunk 2020 is pen and paper RPG.
Now, I thought this was going to be a boss here. I thought Vega was going to be Satan trapped in this thing here, and that's how they had the whole thing set up. Sadly, it was not. Vega is not Satan confirmed. And then I thought that, Samuel Hayden was going to be Satan as well, and he was going to be the final boss, but once again, he was not. I don't know if it would have worked well if Hayden had been Satan, but I just think Vega should have been a little bit more than he was, because he's just a computer. I would have thought, like, a trapped demon, something, or a trapped angel, that could have worked too. I don't think you would need an AI core this huge, and of course, how do you back him up? Don't you need all this stuff to work? It just doesn't... How can you back him up on that little disc? Doesn't make any sense. And I have read 1984. I actually read that as a kid. Metal Gear Solid is a game that I could never really get through. I tried playing the first one, and I sucked at it, and I gave up. That's kind of a...
I've played all of them. Played through all of them. I'm going to be honest, Kojima's a bit, well... How do I put this politely? He's batshit loco. But that being said, the games are enjoyable. I prefer the older games, especially 1 and 2 on the MSX. But generally, they're enjoyable games.
It's like, for me, I barely got past the credits before I got controller smashingly frustrated and gave up. So yeah, I tried to give him a chance. I never got off the container ship on Metal Gear Solid 2, and well, that was it. In fact, there was a video from many years ago that's no longer on the channel of me trying to stumble through Metal Gear Solid 2, and yeah. The video wasn't that great, and it was basically me just sucking tremendously at that particular game. 1984. I actually read that when I was a kid. It's like, it was supposed to be a cautionary tale, not an instruction manual.
Yeah, between that and Brave New World, they're saying, oh, hey, here's our instructions.
Now, I wonder if they show the Wave anymore in, like, schools. I would highly doubt it. For those who don't know what the Wave is, basically, it shows how Antifa is formed. You know, you've got a charismatic leader, you have a way to exclude others, and, yeah. It was also meant to be a cautionary tale. It was, I think, a book, and then became what was called an after-school special. For those who don't even know what a TV even is, those used to air literally after school and basically consisted of PSAs. And, yeah, The Wave was meant to be a cautionary tale on, well, the rise of fascism and stuff like that. And why
nowadays they want you to think that fascism is anything they don't like, which is ironically fascist.
Exactly. But if you've never heard of The Wave, I'm sure it's on YouTube. Look it up. It's going to be a little cheesy, because I actually did look it up not too long ago. But basically it's, yeah. Imagine, if you will, a cautionary tale of why you shouldn't join Antifa. It's kind of crazy, though. Like, the kids in that basically become horrible villains, but by today's standards, they're kind of normal. If you read about the stuff that happens on college campuses, it's kind of interesting, really. How what was once a bad guy is now somewhat normal. That actually reminds me...
Scary.
Exactly. That actually reminds me of a video on a comic. I forget what the name of the comic was, but basically it was a bunch of mutant teens who were supposed to be the hero, but were basically just a bunch of thugs attacking people who didn't agree with them. And the actual reviewer of... Oh, crap, I'm so dead. No, I'm not! Stab it! The reviewer of the actual of the comic was talking about how the exact same plot was flipped around in an early X-Men comic, where the kids were the villains and not the heroes. The X-Men had to stop them. That's kind of scary when you think about it.
Well, the thing is, I can't stand what they've done to Marvel. They've basically destroyed the vision of Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. Stan was an awesome, good person, as was Jack Kirby. And their whole thing was very much like Gene Roddenberry. It's, hey, let's tell modern parables and try to leave the world a better place.
Damn it. Leave the world a better place? How can we have that? Let's see. Oh, you actually remember that MSG video? That was a long time ago. We go on?
To answer Text Storm's questions, no, Antifa doesn't have a leader. They operate in cells. Although, if you want to look at their leaders, start looking at a certain blue set of politicians, especially around California. As for Metal Gear Solid 3, I've played through it 5 times, and once with Big Boss rating. I need another PS3 so I can get back to it.
Well, there's always a way you can emulate it, although you'll probably need a more powerful processor than Socket AM3.
Yeah, it'll be cheaper for me to get a used PS3 and bulletproof it than it will be for me to, right now, to pick up a PC.
So, like, get on my level. Get a math coprocessor, man. See, I don't even remember what a math coprocessor even did. I just think it sounds cool.
It handles floating point. It handles floating point math, such as for Quake, it handled the geometry.
Okay, so it's sort of like a proto graphics card in a way, then.
No,
Shit.
Early processors couldn't handle floating point math. They could handle sequential math.
Tech.
Say somewhere around here I've got a 486 with a Mathco Pro.
That's one of those weird things about the early days of, God damn it, PC gaming. Let's see, 2010 comics are going to age like sour. All those comics are going to age terribly because it's all from one.
Here's the problem: I don't think the industry's going to survive for them to age.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it survived the '90s with all the comic
DC might be shut down.
Huh. It's doing that bad? But then again,
Dan Didio was just fired. He was the one running DC.
Well, that'd be a problem. My thought is this, though. Like, they survived a lot of those comic busts in the past, so...
Yeah, but the problem was the industry then was a spectator's market. This is no longer a spectator's market. This is no market. Right? Nobody's buying what they're trying to sell.
Then again, if they do end up dying, that might be for the best. Then somebody can come in and resurrect DC and Marvel and create... Well, I don't think Marvel's going to die anytime soon, though.
Well, here's the thing. Marvel may or may not. DC might. Remember, AT&T owns them now.
Corporate politics are very strange. See, I had no idea that AT&T owned DC, but then again, I imagine everything owns everything else, so...
AT&T shuts them down. They won't sell. They'll just sit on the IP. They'll make the occasional movie. They won't make any comics.
Of course, now with a much more cynical outlook, it's like they'll close DC for a little while, then they'll bring it back. It's like all new DC, all your favorite heroes, and it's the same old trash they came out with before, though.
No, because here's the thing. AT&T owns DirecTV, and they own a lot of other subsidiaries. Why would they put bad money in front of good? If they close it down, that's it. They'll use the IPs for movies, maybe TV shows. That's all you're going to get. You might get, memorabilia and things like that, but you're not getting comics.
Yeah. See, but then again, it's like, what has been a story released in the last, let's say, 10 years that was actually any good, though? So it's probably not that big of a loss, especially at this point.
Well, there's been some good Green Lantern stories, but that was about 5 years ago.
See, since I'm not a Green Lantern fan, I'm like, oh, Green Lantern! I mean, he's the greatest, man. He did the things against the guy that was yellow. The yellow dude, yeah. I remember there was a friend of mine from many years ago who showed me a Green Lantern comic, and it's like, there's blue lanterns, red lanterns. Like, who the fuck are these people? Like, last time I read a Green Lantern comic, he was like, his weakness was wood. Literally wood. Well, I'm not really sure why his weakness was wood, though. I don't know, I never really got into Green Lantern. Like, I liked him in that one show, Justice League, but it's like, oh, Green Lantern! I saw the movie, Green Lantern, that was pretty terrible. That was like one of the first really bad comic book movies to come out, like after Batman Begins and Iron Man started really making comic book movies decent again.
Except for Iron Man 2. Nobody liked that one.
Yeah. Iron Man 3 was even worse. Like, Iron Man 3 was terrible. I don't know what they were thinking with that. I can see why there weren't any more Iron Man movies after that, though. It's like, oh yeah, Iron Man goes up against the Mandarin who might not be the Mandarin, and then he blows up all his armor, but then he's back with armor in the very next movie. See, Iron Man, you can't use any logic when it comes to Tony Stark, because if you do, he's a complete and total asshole. It's like, okay, we know...
He's supposed to be a complete and total drunk asshole.
Yeah, but it's like... He's like really bad, though, because think about this. Aliens exist, and they're trying to take over the world multiple times. Why would he not give his armor to everyone? And yes, I've read the What If comic where he does that, and it like makes it worse somehow, but I don't buy that. I do not buy that would make things worse. It's also like I do not buy some of the rather, shall we say, dubious decisions of the people who wrote Exiles, where evidently Namora, the female Namor, could somehow take out all the Avengers. I don't buy that either.
Namor was powerful, not this, the female XP Mary Sue Namor wannabe, but not that powerful.
Thankfully, that was more of a what-if kind of thing. But it's like, if she's that powerful, then she needs to be able to take on fucking Galactus. And if not, yeah. Although if they're going to bring Galactus in, I would be very surprised if they didn't. But since there's never really going to be another Fantastic Four film, at least I would highly doubt such a thing would come to pass, they're probably going to make, like how they made Venom, a good guy from the beginning. I guarantee you that Galactus will always be an Avengers villain in the Avengers films.
Well, that's just it. The sad part is Disney's next thing is they're going to further urinate on Jack Kirby's creations. I have no hope for the new phase of Marvel movies, and yeah,
I think
it's not good.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Although Black Widow evidently might not be that bad. I think they're trying not to go for a more, shall we say, feminazi angle on that. So you never know. And I think Cap could get some good use out of an Iron Man suit, though, because he's still a squishy human, even if he's slightly less squishy than normal. Black Widow could definitely make use of some Iron Man armor. Of it, Thor, no, he wouldn't need it, but still. See, Thor's always an interesting character when it comes to Marvel. It's like they always try to downplay his power. Like always. That's why he's like off trying to. It's kind of like Superman in a way. If you want an interesting story, Thor needs to be either incapacitated, off helping an earthquake on another planet, or something. Because once he shows up, he can basically just stomp everything. That's one of the big problems with Iron Man 3 that didn't make any sense. Like, where are the rest of the Avengers? Like, this is a major problem that could be solved by literally any one of them in addition to Iron Man. It's kind of like, why doesn't Thor show up? Why doesn't Superman show up? Eventually I need to watch Superman Red Sun. I'm hoping it's actually decently faithful to the comic. DC animated stuff usually turns out pretty good. And they do have Russian Batman. Like what?
Bruce Timm does generally good work. As for the movie Red Sun, it's not bad. Like I say, I'm trying to avoid DC because I'm just not seeing good things coming at this rate. Things are looking pretty bad.
There is that big disconnect between the comics and the movies. The comics are usually sajubby, but then the movies are your traditional superhero fare. Because that's what people...
because they can't afford not to release something that is somewhat decent in a movie form, because that's a lot more money than dropping down.
Yeah, because people don't want to see, Batman talking about white privilege or some shit. They want to see Batman either fighting the Joker or some other villain. Also, TMNT versus Batman, excellent. I highly recommend watching that. The story is remarkably good, and the animation is really fucking good as well. Hey, come on, it's Batman fighting first against the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then with them. I think they do overuse Ra's al Ghul way too much. I mean, it's like there are plenty of other villains they could use. Iron Patriot, originally Norman Osborn, and then now Rhodey because reasons. I wonder if they're ever going to make Osborn a villain again. Because in the last two Spider-Man movies, they focused on anything but him.
I don't think they will for a while. That being said, if the rumors are to be believed, I am not looking forward to the new Spider-Man movie at all.
Oh, don't tell me. Don't. Because I like Spider-Man.
Oh man. If the leaks are true, yeah.
It's like, we finally got two good ones. After all this time.
You're about to get a very PC, SJW, Marxist BS one.
And I thought the Sam Raimi ones were really bad. Yeah, I didn't like the Sam Raimi ones. I will always say that the guy they got to play him, whatever the fuck his name was too wimpy to be Spider-Man. I get that Spider-Man's supposed to be nerdy, but...
Remember, early Spider-Man, not the later Spider-Man. This is when Peter Parker is still very, very much a young, nebbish nerd.
I grew up with the Spider-Man animated series, so when I think of Spider-Man, I think of that. Spider-Man in college. Where he's basically Batman, but superpowers. God damn it. Fucking imp. Twilight, Robert Pattinson is the new Batman. I tried to be positive about that, but yeah, I don't think he's gonna... I don't think he has the acting chops to be Batman. We'll just have to see, though. Still, a Twilight dude is Batman. But then again, Michael Keaton was able to be Batman, so you never know. Except Batman couldn't turn his neck. And back to the Hell on Earth novelization. Since we're in the 90s, the AR is not nearly as popular as it is today. So people are talking about how great the Mini 14 is and how great the M14 is. It's just kind of funny to read it from a modern day perspective. It's like, sure it is.
Well, remember, during the 90s, Colt would not sell AR-15s.
Yeah, I guess Palmetto State Armory didn't exist.
No, PSA wasn't a glimmer in anybody's eye then. You had DPMS, which Randy Luth did okay work, and you had Bushmaster when it was, the Wyndham crew. They did great work, but they were small fries back then. DPMS wasn't. I mean, they actually sold to the U.S. military.
No! Don't sell to the military.
They sold to Colt. They sold to the U.S. military and to Colt, so they kind of were important.
Colt. Let's see. I've not seen the new Obi-Wan thing, and I've never seen the Lighthouse, High Life, or the River? Whatever that might say. I only know him as the Twilight dude, so yeah. How am I to know?
And Tin Man, I will say this. The Mini 14 I have a love-hate relationship with. Nowhere near as much as the actual M14, but that being said, thanks to Samson, we can now get the A-Team stocks rolling on those things, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah, those things always look pretty nice, but yeah. My biggest problem with the Mini 14 more than anything else is the price. Those things are ridiculously expensive for what they are.
Well, here's the thing. Since the materials changed, the price has gone up to reflect the cost of manufacture.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense, but it's like $800 for, just a basic semi-auto rifle when you can get an AR-15 for less than $5.
Well, you're dealing with economy of scale. Almost everyone and their parents make AR parts. And as much as I like Ruger, I'm sorry, they don't make their receivers. I can tell you who makes their receivers, but I don't think I'd want to face a lawsuit. So I'm going to keep that kind of hush-hush for now.
Now, wait a minute.
I'll answer if it's in private, but I'm not going to say that on a stream where it can be trailed back as evidence.
No, wait a minute. Ruger receivers or PSA receivers? I'm confused.
Ruger's AR receivers. They don't make their own.
Oh. Now, I know they have Colt Hammer Forged barrels, but...
Yeah, they make their own barrels, they make their own parts. They don't make their own receivers for the AR-15s.
Okay. Let's see, I'm not even going to guess.
There's no shame in not making your own receiver for an AR-15. It just makes prudent sense, but revealing who makes their receivers, having it be able to trail back as evidence, might not bode too well if I want to get back into the gun industry.
Yeah. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting that I didn't know is evidently some of the super cheapo ARs actually are manufactured in China, or at least some of the parts are.
So yeah, some of the parts are, and avoid Chinesium. If you're going to go for a parts kit, then go ahead and get the parts that are made in the U.S. Go through Luth AR, go through any known U.S. manufacturer.
That's the one thing, though. If Norinco could still import guns, I would totally love to get one of those. The Canadians can get one. Those Canadian M14 kind of things that shoot 7.62x3.9 to use AK mags. I find those delightfully interesting. That, and I wouldn't mind getting one of those Colt Woodsman clones, just because I like the look of the Colt Woodsman. And would not want to have to spend the kind of money to get one.
Yeah. They didn't sell ARs to the civilian populace because of... Right before the Clinton ban, it was elitism and a really bad corporate decision. And then the ban happened, and it's like, oh great, we can't buy it. But that being said, Colt 6920 blue box rifles, we did sell up until 2004 unofficially. You had, vendors who would pick up a few spares that were intended for LEOs. It's like, well, the LEOs didn't want them. Okay, we'll sell them to the civilians.
I think it's stuff like that that kept the AR from really blowing up until somewhat recently, though.
Well, yes and no. What really caused the AR to explode in popularity was the bid for SOCOM Block 1. From 2001 till 2004, when the Ugly Guns ban finally died in 2004, SOCOM Block 1 was going, and everybody was making accessories to try to get in on that. And as soon as the ban lifted, all that research turned into, well, we got to sell it somehow.
All that research turned to dollar signs. See, if I actually had the money back then, what I would have preferred to have gotten was a Kalash. I still prefer the AK and Soviet designs to ARs and things of that nature.
I like both.
There's just something about that AK that I absolutely just adore, even if I can't hit anything with it because I can't goddamn sight in my fucking red dot, but that's neither here nor there. Neither here nor there.
I will say this. I wish that Stig had actually taken the time to move the tooling from the 550 series here to the U.S. I can still get a Stig 550 if I want one. The problem is, I gotta have a fat wallet for that one.
I need to actually see what that looks like, because you've mentioned it in the past. I'm not entirely sure what it is.
Tech, it's completely possible to buy SPOS 12s on the market. You expect to spend about $800, but here's the thing. Having owned one, and having run and cleaned one, they look cool. They're a pain in the butt to use, especially if you're right-handed.
As for me, I'm just not a big shotgun guy. I mean, I have a couple of the average 12 gauges, and I was like, yeah, whatever. For me, I like my rifles and pistols. More pistols than rifle, though, just because going to that rifle range is just so... hour there, hour back. And if it fucks up... And if you can't hit anything, like today, it's kind of a wasted trip.
And 10 man, I'll say this. It's not so much that it's overrated, it's the fact that it's an old design philosophy that really hasn't, it's been surpassed. If you want it's going to be a little bit harder to find, but if you want a shotgun which will do both pump action and semi-auto, your better bet is to find a good Benelli M3 or find one of the Turkish clones. The Turkish clones won't be anywhere near the same in quality, and you really don't have too much accessories you can add to them, but they work. As for the M3, stonking amazing. Benelli should have sold that more, but they didn't.
Oh, crap. Shit.
The SPOS 12 was useful for its era, and when you put it in pump action mode, it'll run less lethal rounds all day, every day. You can run Taser X reps through it, or
God damn it!
Round. sting ball rounds easily. But cleaning it is an absolute pain because it has corners you don't even know it exists until you take it apart.
And I would take the AK. See, I always like to think my favorite kind of like scenario is if you get parachuted into the Raccoon City versus going to some kind of war. Because when you go to war, generally there's always a good chance you'll get blown up by an artillery shell that you didn't see, and yeah. But being parachuted into Raccoon City, that's a little different.
Depends. Given my other druthers and if parts availability was common, Daewoo K2. Failing that, AR-15, if I were parachuted down here during a Raccoon City style event, yeah, I'll take my AK-74. Mission drives gear, so you're going to get different answers for different missions from me.
It's like for me though, it's like the AK just feels like a good general purpose for just about anything. It's like 7.62x39 is good for 300 meters or 300 yards, whatever the case may be. You know, it's got a fairly decent amount of stopping power. It's a bit heavy, depending on if you use metal mags or Magpul mags. It just feels like that works in just about anything. Now the Daewoo does work though, because I think isn't that like I'm trying to remember what that is. I know it's a South Korean thing.
The South Koreans answer to the AR using an AK's push piston system.
Yeah, that's what I thought that was. Okay, but see, why 5.56 over 7.62 though?
Simply because there is such a thing as over-penetration and unfamiliar territory. I don't know what's behind those walls.
I guess there is that, but when you're trying to escape a city filled with both zombies and monsters, I would want something that could take on an actual, like 500-pound monster, which I just don't think a 5.56 could do. It's not really designed to do that.
No, it's not, but shot placement beats anything else.
I think for me it'd still just be the AK, with Beretta 92 to back up.
Now, if I know I'm facing 500-pound monsters, well, that's when I'd say neither AK or an AR. Give me an HKG3, preferably A3 stock. Let me do the mods to it.
Yeah, but see, then you'd be limited by ammo capacity, though. Because you wouldn't be able to take as many 308s as you would be 7.62s, though.
I can hump a ruck with 10 full mags of, 308 pretty damn easy. I've done it before.
Yeah, that could work.
Got Trinity Tactical around here. We do 1 mile ruck marches in full kit before we start shooting.
I'd actually like to try that. But with something a lot lighter than 308.
I do ruck marches with the Keltec RFB, which is not any lighter than a G3. It's just smaller.
We can jump out of armored vehicles. Eventually I gotta write that Resident Evil fanfic scenario thing that I've been thinking of since I was literally a teenager. Although that was it was mainly a vehicle to drive me getting together with Jill Valentine, but whatever. I find that's kind of crazy now that I think of it. Okay, when I was like a teenager, Jill Valentine seemed really, really old, but she was like, what, 27? I am older than Jill Valentine. That's kind of crazy. Evidently there's a quote from Frank Miller that he kind of had a midlife crisis when he realized he was older than Spider-Man, although I don't know if it's the character or the comic itself. Because I'm not sure how old Frank Miller even is. He might be older than the comic.
Yeah. And tech, why nobody makes a clone? Because right now, Frankie is owned by Benelli, and nobody wants to face those lawyers.
And not the AK. The AK is absolutely amazing for what it is. It's a rifle from like barely post World War II, and it's still relevant to this day. It's still a decent contender against the AR, and it doesn't have that gun.
This is also why I'm a big SIG 550 fan. Let's take the AK, let's make it Swiss, let's make it 5.56, and let's just dial it up to 11.
I'll just take the classic Russian any day. Oh, with a Beretta 92.
I'd be saying heresy if I didn't say I didn't like the standard AK. I own an AK-74. And I plan on building a Suchka.
Now, what I'd like to know is what you need to take down Mr. X with. Or the Nemesis.
Preferably there's something heavy, belt-fed, and or something, given absolute druthers, a Humvee equipped with, HK's GPMG.
I was thinking more like Barrett 50.
40mm high-pressure belt-fed grenade launcher is generally what I would bring to the party.
Yeah, it works too. I was thinking something more man-portable. Well, Barrett 50 is not really what you would call man-portable, but still, it's more man-portable than that.
It's man-portable. I've run a mile with one.
Really? That thing weighs fucking 10 pounds.
No, it weighs 25 pounds before you add ammo and before you add the scope.
I thought it was 10 pounds.
Oh no,
God damn it. Not again.
By the time you've got that thing equipped and ready to shoot, you're talking 35 pounds before you add ammo.
Do you have a powered exoskeleton?
No. I wish I did.
Your knees must be screaming at you.
Well, understand, when I say ruck march, I mean you've got 100 pounds of gear on you. Not just counting weapon and ammo. You total out to about 100 pounds of gear.
See, that's one of those things where what would be all that you would need to do the Raccoon City escape? Now, for those who don't know what the Raccoon City escape is, you wake up at the top floor of a hotel in downtown Raccoon City. You have... Originally, this goes to show you how old I am. Originally, what you were supposed to have was a PDA loaded with maps of the city and objectives that you have to complete, and then you escape the city in a helicopter. Now, originally, it was supposed to be a UH-1 Iroquois, then I changed it to something bigger, a Chinook, and then the final revision, which was from, I think 10 years ago, was a Sea Stallion. Although I don't know why I went with Sea Stallion, because I don't think there's an Army equivalent. If there is, then I am blanking on it. But I selected Sea Stallion for some reason. I'm not really sure why. But anyway, you're supposed to do that. Now, your objectives are, you've got to not only survive, but you have to rescue Jill Valentine. Oh, yes. Actually getting her to engage in happy time with you is completely optional. You have to also rescue a few other stars and a couple of civilians. You have to do all that before the city gets nuked. Now, when I was a teenager and thought that I was completely bulletproof, it was like, I could totally do that with an SKS. You can guess what I had at the time. That and a Smith & Wesson 59. I don't know, maybe you could do that. I don't really know what you would need to do that, outside of a lot of luck.
Given druthers, you wouldn't need the 100 pounds of gear, but you would definitely need well over 300 pounds of ammo. You're going to plan on clearing the city.
Well, the idea is you're not clearing the city. You need as much ammo. Wait a second?
Just escape.
Yeah, well, and also rescue the people, but you get the idea. The idea is that you're not trying to fight every zombie. Just be able to hold your own against them. Now, my thought about the SKS was that I would have a bit of an advantage because the SKS has a bayonet, and so you could stab some of the zombies versus actually shooting them.
So if you're going that route, you might as well just go LBE and take at the very bare minimum a K-bar strapped to your non-dominant side. I would take something a little bit bigger. I would go with a decent Bowie, or at the very least, some river knife, but...
See, the only problem with a knife, though, is just you still have to get kind of close up to the zombies, and you don't get bitten. Whereas with a bayonet, you've got a decent amount of reach.
In which case, I say tomahawk.
Yeah, I don't know. Would that really fix the reach issue, though?
I'm going to give you almost as much... Here's the thing. A Bowie, at the very least, has a 10 to 13-inch blade. A tomahawk will get you out to about 14 inches. It's 14 inches over your base arm. You're coming in right at about the same swing length as your average bayonet.
Well,
at least equipped on an M4.
It could be said that's just one more piece of gear you have to take with you, though. Whereas with the bayonet...
Yeah, but with Tomahawk, it's multi-purpose. It's also a rescue tool.
I suppose that could work. Yes, I am aware of the Jill sandwich meme. Now, see, when I think of Jill Valentine, though, for the Raccoon City Escape, it's not the video game version. It's the one played by that French chick, whatever the fuck her name is. I thought she was, like, the sexiest woman ever.
And tech, as for terms of Saigas, I used to convert them. I made a fair amount of money doing that. The clones are actually pretty good. Here's the thing. When you build one, you have to determine, are you going to be running heavy loads or light loads? Because you're not going to be switching easily between the two. Your main spring, your recoil spring, will determine what you're running.
Right. I'm saving the quad damage for a little bit later. This is where I need to be able to quick save, though, because this is a particularly difficult arena. I will give Doom 2016 this. The arenas are actually decently sized, so they don't get really boring if you're stuck in one for a while. So I grab it. So I didn't really like to think about, like, what gun would you take to war, though, just because there's so much more that goes into that than, you know, your rifle.
And Kimoda, semi-auto shotguns are more practical for 3-gun, as in terms of more practical in combat. That's really down to training. I can fire a pump-action Mossberg 590 almost as fast as most people can fire target to target, if not faster, than one would be with, say, Benelli M1040. USMC M1040 might be very fast, but you can get pretty fast with pump action.
And of course, the biggest issue with shotguns is just being able to carry enough ammo with you. Because those 12 gauge shells do get a bit weighty.
Well, it's not just weight, it's size. And if you're going to take a shotgun as a primary, really need to look at SOE Gear's shotgun vest. Or at the very least, their shotgun cart system, so you can modify LBE. And tech, and yes, unfortunately, I'm fully appraised on them. You know, it's not a full close down right now. It's technically a indeterminate hiatus. But with that said, it might as well be the same as closing them down, which really annoys me because it was Bushmaster, DPMS, and Tapco and Storm Lake. Tapco I'm a little bit annoyed with because there goes the G2 trigger. G2 trigger was a pretty good AK and Saiga trigger. I'm really PO'd about Storm Lake because they're the people who have all the technical data for the Detonics Combat Master. Meaning, nobody has that technical data now. If I want to make a new barrel for it, I pretty much have to take mine, take it apart, do full measurements, and you know, I'm going to have to spend a couple extra $100 in getting barrels fabbed to find the right heat treat, which is genuinely annoying.
It also kind of sucks if you want to get like spare barrel. God damn it! Spare barrels for certain other pistols and things of that nature. Glad I got mine when I got it. Just saying. Oh yeah, Rain, do you think there'd ever be a way to convert a 45 1911 to a 9mm?
Actually, yes, but you're going to have to hand fit the barrel.
Okay, that's what I thought.
You will be using different mags, you'll be using different mainspring, you'll have to hand fit the barrel. It's not impossible by any means, yeah, but it is going to be work.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's not really economically viable. It'd be better just to buy another 9mm pistol.
It depends. You can say if you do it yourself, yeah, it's economically viable. If you have a smith do it for you, just buy another 9mm.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah, one of these days, eventually I do intend to get another 10mm, or not, I'm going to get another 1911 in 10mm, there we go.
I would actually recommend against that.
No, when are they going to stop making 10mm again?
No, it's just the fact that there's a lot of 10mm 1911s that are not up to task. If you're going to have to go that route, go with Rock Island.
That's what I was planning on anyway. Because I think one that's double stacked. I have no reason to buy it, but it's cool.
No, they shoot pretty well. But like the Colt Delta Elite, avoid.
I would avoid anything Colt these days. If only for moral... If only for moral reasons. Let's see. Don't have the SKS bubba anymore. Well, mine's tap code, so yeah. And I.
Well, here's the thing. As much as I am at times a rifle purist, unless it's a permanent mod, you can always go back to the original configuration.
Yeah, that's generally where I draw the line too. But like tapcoing an SKS is not a bad thing. I mean, so long as you fit the stock properly. I think that's the biggest problem people have with those things is they never fit the stock appropriately, and thus it throws off a lot of causes a lot of issues. The big problem I think people have with mags is they don't ever seat them properly, and that's where the jams come from. Because
Moto, you can defend yourself against a bear with an AR-15, although you really want something better.
Yeah. If you got like a headshot, you can take it down.
Consider. No, to the chest, one of the head will take it down. I mean, you're not going to one-shot a bear with 5.56 unless you get one right in the eye socket. But that being said, if you're going to go with AR-15 against bear, well, you got 458 SOCOM, 450 Bushmaster. You've got options. As for the high power, love the high power to death. Nobody outside of the Turks are making anything resembling the high power that you can buy right now.
I've considered getting a high power on a number of occasions. Just they're generally a bit more expensive than I would like to pay for a 9mm though.
I wish the Bulgarians would bring back the Arcticus 9DA here to the US, because that was, while it's not visually a high power clone, it fires a lot like a high power without the mag safety. They were really good guns.
I still don't get the mag safety though. It's like, what was the point of that? And they still have them.
Essentially, it was a law enforcement requested item.
Why did they want it?
Essentially, if they were disarmed with the mag out, couldn't be shot with your own gun.
Yeah, it still seems kind of limited though.
Well, it is very limited. That's why I don't like it. But that being said, it's a moot point.
Yeah, they're not going away, that's for sure. But my biggest problem with those is they lull people into a false sense of security. It's like, oh yeah, the gun is unloaded. And then they always leave the one in the chamber and they end up shooting themselves in the foot or shooting somebody.
Oh yeah, you never trust the safety. Engage it, treat it as it's supposed to be treated, but never trust a safety, no matter what the gun. Safety is not a free pass to act like an ass.
Yeah, that's remember how people are in any era. Although gun safety is definitely improved. I mean, there's those period pictures of people just wandering around with a loaded gun with their finger on the trigger.
No, you mean Hollywood?
Hey, in real life, I've seen some period photos.
Oh yeah, but here's the thing. In the 1800s, those are single action. You have to cock the hammer back.
I've also seen some stuff from the 20th century where they walk around with Garens like that. And I guess they might have the safety on, but it still looked kind of odd.
Risky as hell, yeah.
Teaching somebody to shoot is always kind of an interesting experience.
And tech right now, the best SKS you're going to get is the Yugo. At least for the money.
That was kind of the case back in the day, though, in some respects. I was able to get mine for $140 at a gun show back in 2007. Which I highly doubt people are going to be able to do these days. If you're going to get a semi-auto rifle, just go AR. Especially if it's your first one. Because it's just, that's the cheap option now. It's just ironic because when I was younger, that was the most expensive option. At least that's the way it seemed to me. Actually, no, the most expensive option would have probably been the FS2000. Because remember, that was like $2,000.
Here's the thing. The FS2000 was interesting. Had one of the worst bullpup triggers ever. It wasn't a bad gun. It's just
crap.
The whole time I had it, it's like, why didn't I just get a Steyr AUG?
Is that even made anymore? I'd like to think it would be.
Yeah. Steyr AUG is, the FS2000 isn't.
Well, that's today on Forgotten Weapons, the FS2000. Yeah, the PS90 survived much better than that one did, that's for sure.
Well, it's because the PS90 filled a niche, and, well, it's interesting and as fun as the F2000 FS2000 was, it didn't. It was sealed up too tight. If you had a jam, I hope you got thin fingers because you're accessing it via the toilet seat.
Oh, crap. Please tell me I have chainsaws. God damn it! Let's see, what does it say? Real life M1A pulse rifle for Universe B.
Oh, it's a 10mm caseless rifle. If we ever solve the problem with caseless ammo, it'd be fine.
Oh! I just recently read a book of short stories based upon aliens. It's Aliens Bug Hunt. There is a short story on the pulse rifle written by Larry Correia. And how they solved the caseless... also, he rips off the story of JMB. No, he doesn't. He rips off the story of Barrett. Basically, the pulse rifle was invented in someone's garage. And how they got around the caseless issue is they used cooler burning powder. And that's how it worked.
Well, that, great from a fiction point of view, but it still doesn't solve the problems we have with it, which are waterproofing it, and here's the problem that barely anybody thinks about. It's a funny little thing about brass-cased ammo. It acts as a wonderful disposable heat sink.
That the story covers that, and they say it's cooler burning powder. It works.
Yeah, I'll grant it, but still, you'd still want something like a forced air induction or something to keep that system cool.
I think the story might have talked about that. I need to actually do a video potentially on that. But he rips off Barrett, as in building it in the garage, and then the getting it adopted is based around the AR-15.
Barrett's not the only one who built it in the garage. I mean, let's look back to the Green Meanie, the Accuracy International.
Crap.
That was two guys who built rifles in their garage, and they managed to produce one of the finest sniper marksman systems out there.
What wasn't built in the garage? Although the AR-15 wasn't built in someone's garage, though.
No, that was built in a lab, in a very controlled, 1950s style lab. Men in suits with ties, smoking cigarettes around the drawing board.
For every cigarette they smoked, it got one more decade of life.
Well, I guess that means we'll be using that by the time of Colonial Marines.
Well, in the one of the comics, they had a whole rack of them. So yeah, I'm not surprised. They might survive that long. Although I wonder if the AR-15 could ever take up the role of the AK in that regard, where it's just the most common rifle that even low-level militias can have. And I think that actually is the case today in some respects.
Almost. I mean, even Russia is seeing a pretty big boom in AR-15s.
Please tell me I have rockets. I absolutely despise this guy. No! God damn it!
Charlotte depends on the firearm you're running. Sometimes drums are not a great option. Like AR-15, right now, there's pretty much one drum that's worth its money, and that's the Magpul D60. And you only want to run one.
Yeah, drums do have that cool aspect. I do intend to get one for my PC carbine at some point, but yeah, I mean, they're hard to carry, and they're expensive, and take
Well, let me rephrase it. There is one more drum for the AR-15 that's worth it. Though you're not going to like the price at all. That's the Arm Attack drums. Those things, you want to pay about $400 for a drum? Go Arm Attack.
You get what you pay for.
They do work. They work great, but ugh.
Well, the Glock drums made by Magpul are going to be like over $100. That's why I'm not. I'll wait for the price to come down on that.
Just go with a couple happy sticks from KCI. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
As for the Thompson, honestly, reloading a Thompson's a. I gotta watch my wording here because it can get really crass. Like exceptionally crass. I'll be polite. Reloading a Thompson under pressure is a lot like stumbling your way through a dark room. You don't exactly know where you're going with this.
I think, keep in mind, there was 100-round mags designed and fielded. Well, not fielded by any military.
Military never fielded a drum, and for good reason.
I would like to try a Thompson with a 100-round drum, though. I think it's got to weigh like 20 pounds.
Oh, it's a lot of fun, but, you know, it's... Here's the thing. I get called weird for this, but if you threw me into World War II, I'm taking a grease gun. I'm not taking the Thompson.
Yeah. I guess they're lighter.
Well, it's not a matter of lighter. It's a matter of very, very reliable, very low rate of fire, so it's very controllable. I actually have time on both, and I prefer the grease gun. Yeah, it's crude. Yeah, it's ugly. Yeah, it's cheap. It works. It works so well that the Philippines are still using the ones we gave them.
Damn. I thought it was kind of interesting to see that World War II guns are still, well, relevant. And stab him!
They modernized it. They come up with a new suppressor. They mounted a Picatinny rail and red dot to it, and it just works.
That's just perfection. Modularity. Yeah, the Thompson is historic. I mean, it's cool. It's kind of like the M1 Garand in that regard. Although the M1 Garand still has a lot of practicality to it, though.
Yeah, the Thompson is still very classy, and it is timeless in terms of design. It is something that is, you know, a good suit and a good Thompson. Yeah, you got it going on. That's about as cool as you're gonna get.
The old Chicago typewriter.
Oh yeah.
Well, actually,
that
here's why.
You can't adjust the sights on a Thompson.
Although here's the better question: though. Is it still classy if it's an M1A1 though? Where like some of the class is gone. Just saying.
No, it's still classy. You just have UMC style class.
So basically, if you need something absolutely destroyed, even if the your own side doesn't want it destroyed,
Pretty much.
what the stock's used as a hammer. And stab him! No, I'm not stabbing him, but... And smack him, there we go.
I got no problem with the Thompson, but I prefer the grease gun because, well, like I say, it's really hard to argue with. You can, at 25 yards, shoulder it, get on target, and just absolutely unload into that target, never missing a beat.
I actually considered trying to build one of those once. Like one of the semi-auto ones with a 16-inch barrel. But ultimately decided against it just because it wasn't... I didn't consider it economically viable, because I think doing that would cost like $600 to $800, and that's just not really that worth it.
Yeah, and you've got to weld. It's...
Oh, crap.
That, the fact that cleaning a grease gun is a hell of a lot easier than cleaning a Thompson. All I got to do to clean a grease gun is remove mag, check for clear, pull down on a detent, unscrew the barrel, boom, everything comes out.
Right, run away. Now the interesting thing about the Thompson was like the early ones had the Blish locking system where they thought like metals of different types would have a different friction. It's like, and that was as of like the 1910s.
They weren't wrong. I mean, they do have different friction coefficients, but it really didn't. That and the cuts compensator didn't quite help out as much as they thought it did. It did help out a little, but ultimately it just added expense more than anything else.
Come on, come on. I hate to admit it, but some of these checkpoint systems, I guess, are somewhat more satisfying because you are overcoming a greater challenge than just hitting the quick save key. But it's so much more tedious. And rip apart. Now the Thompson
World War
actually...
non-American submachine gun, I'd have to take a look at the PPSH or really what the Swiss were doing. They were doing all right. That being said, I'll stick up and say, if given no other choice, give me a Sten. I know it'll work.
Stens are just kind of weird, though. They were so cheap.
They're cheap, they're horrible, they're ugly, they're downright hideous. But they work.
Now, do I have to kill 3 of these things? I think so. We're going to finish this level and call it a day. And talking about the Thompson reminds me of something. I recently read a book by Aaron Alston. For those who don't know who that is, he was most famous for writing some of the X-Wing books and some of the latter-day Star Wars books. A fairly decent writer, but I read something that was non-Star Wars that was surprisingly... It's a book that's not good, but I didn't hate it. It was poorly written, but it had an interesting concept that was handled kind of well. It's weird. I don't really know how you describe it. I mean, it wasn't written very well, but I don't know. Do you know what I'm trying to say, Rain?
It's a bit like a train wreck. You know it's not good, but you can't look away.
No, it's not even that. It's like, I know it's not... It's on the cusp of being bad and good, I guess is the best way you put it. Because it's not a train wreck. But it just wasn't as pleasant to read as it probably should have been. It's weird. Because I couldn't put it down, even though I kind of wanted to, because it was so poorly written. But it was poorly... I don't even know how to describe it. But anyway, it's obvious why it's kind of obscure. It's called Doc Sidhe, or... You know, like the elves, Sideh or something? I'm sure
right.
you've heard of the word. Probably could pronounce it better than I can. But whatever that word is. Anyway,
well, here's the thing. It's pronounced different by different languages. Like, it could be taken as dark side.
I wonder if it was, because that'd be a perfect joke. But it's basically Doc Savage, but an elf. In the 30s. It's I'm pretty sure most of you don't know who Doc Savage is. Imagine Batman, but without the costume, and you're not too far off.
Pretty much.
It's one of those things where it's a multi-worlds kind of thing. You've got Dude Bro living in the 90s. He's a failed boxer. And one night, he's attacked by some thugs, and he's thrown into this mystical portal that takes him to an alternate 1930s that is basically an adventure world, but instead of humans, it's elves. And here's the interesting thing. It takes about half the book for the plot to even get started up with. None of the characters are particularly interesting. You're supposed to care about them, but they get no development whatsoever, and yet, there's just enough there to really be kind of interesting. I don't know, it's the weirdest book I've ever read, because I can't really describe it as good, but I can't describe it as bad either. The world is well thought out, because it is literally adventure world, but with elves. The plot, once it gets going, is decently... I'm trying to think of how to best describe it. It's weird. There needs to be another word for... There needs to be like an in-between word between good and bad. I don't think there's an actual word for that.
Exceedingly awful, I suppose, would fit.
I don't even know if I'd say awful. It's just a mild form of awful. Let's say that. It's awful, but back it off to like a quarter of awful. There you go. Because he didn't do that bad of a job, but it's an interesting world. The characters should be interesting, but aren't. And it's a book that if you're into elves, if you're into like adventure fiction, you might like it. But you're probably going to think it's kind of crappily written because the characters don't get enough development. There we go. That's the best way to describe it. It's not a lost opportunity because he does deliver on what he wants to deliver on. He just doesn't do it very well. But back off that doesn't do it very well to like a quarter of that because he's like that close. It's that close to being good. It's like literally that close. If he gave his characters a little more development, it'd be good. But it's not bad either. I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point. It's a book that I didn't hate. There we go. It's a book that I didn't hate. General Lotz 2020. But anyway,
potential is what it sounds like.
But he kind of delivers on it, though. It's just the thing is, there we go. It's got a lot of filler. Boom. It is a book that would probably make for a better short story. Instead, he filled it with a bunch of crap, like the character going to get jeans made because jeans don't exist in the 1930s. No, and they did exist in the 1930s in our world, but they don't exist in elf 30s.
Okay, that makes no sense because the whole reason jeans were made was because they were made for miners in the 1800s.
They use something else in elf world. Also, elves can't touch iron for whatever reason. Or steel.
Okay, steel I don't get. Iron I can because that's going by the old Fae. You know, the old Fae lore is, you know, supernatural beings are, you know, dealt with by cold iron.
Actually, I don't know why they don't like steel either, but the doc, he ends up almost getting killed by a cop putting handcuffs on him in our world. So that was kind of interesting. But then he just like immediately recovers from it like it was nothing. Basically, it was a book that could have been better. I guess that, I don't know. As indecisive as I'm being, that's how indecisive I was when I was reading it. Because like I'd get to a point where like just some random crap happens, or there's some really bad filler, and then like the next chapter would be really good, and then the next chapter would have a bunch of crap that no one cares about. Or like there'd be some really bad character development. Like one minute this character likes one character, the next chapter they don't, and it's just it's one of those kind of books. It's easy to see why Aaron Alston would get better, but I think that was probably like his first book, and so that's why it was so bad or so half good. But I really do like the idea of the elf world though, where it's like this alternate 1930s and there's like magic along with, you know, like technology. Since they can't use steel, a lot of their guns are made out of brass and a variety of other things like that.
Oh, they're using low pressure rounds.
Yeah, pretty much. Because like when some humans come over there to aid one of the villains, they've got like, you know, modern day. I don't think they were AR-15s. I think they were something that didn't actually exist, but was like a big fictional thing at the time. And like they just completely stomp the elves. And also the planes were kind of interesting as well. Like if you like classic aviation, you'll like some of the bits with like the planes, because like the Doc invented his own flying boat, because flying boats were a thing. I don't know. I don't know if I didn't like the book because of me or if it was actually that bad. It's one of those things where it could be either or. Look up Doc Sidhe if you want something that could either be really good or really kind of meh.
And Turok, as for 20-inch barrel plus brace, I haven't seen anybody do it, but I do have a spare lower that I could try it with. And that being said, as long as it's not an M16A3 upper or M16A4 upper, yeah, you can fire that one-handed, not too bad, not that much of a problem. It's like it's an A2. You got the old plastic hand guards. You got the the non-flat top carry handle. That's not so bad. You can fire that one-handed with the arm extended. All right.
This is why I stick with the 16-inch barrel, so I don't have to stick it. So I don't have to shoulder occasionally, because we would never want to shoulder all the time, because then that would be bad. That would be raycast, would it not be?
I don't think the BATFE cares about someone's, you know, pigment as much as they care about someone doing something they don't like.
Okay, so it'd be sexist then. It'd be sexist if you shouldered it all the time, because it'd be like you're shouldering a burden, which, as we all know, only women can shoulder.
I know, right?
That's the best I got. That's the only thing that explains why, you know, you can't shoulder a brace, or why you can't have a rifle with a short barrel, because reasons.
Yeah, you can have a pistol, you know, caliber, you know, a rifle caliber, it'll do just fine. That and the fact that there's a lot you can do with an AR pistol.
And blow 'em up!
Or an AK pistol.
That makes me
And
wonder.
the best thing you can do right now is, as we used to say back in the day, keep circulating the tapes. Get the information out there to everyone you know who cares, and everyone you know who enjoys their Second Amendment.
Let's see. You recall the gun making it a bit harder to fire? Can't wait to come. Oh. But yeah, Dock City. It was a cool idea, but not that great. I can definitely tell the writer was, shall we say, a bit horny. Why? Because the elves, part of their culture is you can just walk up and say, "Wanna fuck?" and they'll do it, apparently. Which I guess you can kind of do today, I suppose, to some extent.
Yeah, but the results usually aren't that good.
I wouldn't think. Let's put it this way, that's not something I would do. Oh, we're at the end of the game! Fuck it, let's just beat the game.
They promised me.
And
so
yeah, I've
much.
built an 80% lower. That being said, unless that's your only option, just go with a PSA lower. It's cheaper, it's easier, it works.
Now see, like, this is a very tame way to do this. If this was 40k, they'd be describing her arms growing, like, really huge, and her body turning into that, you know. Instead, it's just she falls in the blood and turns into the Spider Mastermind.
Yeah, there'd be bones cracking, flesh rending. It would not be a pretty sight for 40k.
But thus, what happens to all the followers of Chaos?
That or they just die. Either or.
Yeah, but this is more entertaining. So that's the thing. I don't know why anybody'd follow Chaos. I mean, I get why they do it, but it's like, what do you expect? It's an evil space god. What do you think? You're special or something? Well, they probably do.
No, some of them don't even care. It's pretty much, well, I can either be a slave to the Emperor, or I can, be an immortal slave to a god who occasionally gives me what I want.
See, my thought is this.
Of course, working to become that slave to a chaos god is a hell of a lot of work, and there's definitely no guarantee of survival or happiness.
And so that's the thing. If I was stuck in 40k as, like, a factory worker, I would rather live like that than have to be a follower of Chaos, because it's not... Because at least, as a factory worker, you just die. You're not going to have your soul constantly devoured by Slanesh for all eternity.
Well, that's an Eldar thing. The humans don't have their souls devoured by Slanesh. We get used as playthings.
Well, that... Still, though, either or, it's not something that I would want to have to deal with. Not that that's really a...
Yeah, one can only take a chainsword up the rear end so many times before it gets boring.
I would think so. This is a chainsword made of dildos. The dildo sword. But even then, that would get old after a while. Just give me, a box falling on my head once versus that. I'll check the chat as soon as we kill the Spider Mastermind. They do change up some of the names in the Doom novelization. Instead of the Spider Mastermind, it's just the Spider Mind. It's actually Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
No!
I'll be blunt. I am one of the biggest detractors of Doom 2016. It's not a bad game. It's just, it's not Doom to me. The guns are a little weak. They sound a little weak. And there's just a bit too much focus on the old rip and tear.
Oh yeah, that also reminds... Well, that is... one of the comments reminded me. One of the other things about Dock City, though, is you can tell the writer had a tiny bit of a political bias. Tiny bit. Because, of course, when the Doc shows up in the human world, they're like, oh, there's clearly not equality amongst all the races. I mean, yeah, there's some of that, but of course that's the first thing he comments on, because evil whitey bad. And elf's good.
The thing is, here's the thing about equality. It's there. Whether you like it or not, it's there. We're all equal. Nobody ever said life was going to be pleasant, going to be easy, going to be nice, or going to be friendly. We're all equally treated like garbage.
Exactly. Enjoy! But, yeah, it's just one of those things that I noticed. It's like, I don't know, would I have noticed that in the past, though? The reason I say that is, like, these days I'm much more conscious of what these people are saying, you know? So it's like, would I have been that annoyed back in the day? Because, back when that book would have been released, which was like 95, I think. That just wasn't as in your face as it is today, though. At least it didn't seem that way. So, still though, that little bit wasn't that bad, but still. I think there's a few ways that Aaron Alston could have fixed that book. I think he put too much filler and not enough character moments. Because like one character dies and you're supposed to feel bad about it, but he's been in like a chapter and had like 3 or 4 lines, and that was it. And he didn't really contribute much of anything. And like you're supposed to care about the main character, but he doesn't. He's not really given that much time to grow, and he's not really that amazing, I guess is the best way to put it. Because he's a failed boxer, and he's a failed boxer because he can't go the distance. And like,
so he's not going for speed.
Yeah, pretty much. No, he's not a boxer. He's a taekwondo guy. Whatever those people are called. Which I guess in the 90s would have been kind of an interesting thing, because I don't think martial arts was quite that popular back then, or at least not as well known as it is today.
UFC was getting its start back then. But here's the thing, and I'm gonna cop some hate for this. Taekwondo is less of a martial arts and more of a competitive thing. Hate to say it, but I can't lie about it. It's gorgeous, it's an awesome style, it's solid exercise, and it makes for really good sporting events, but as actual fighting technique goes, no. Just no. It's a little too flashy, it's a little too fancy. Remember, UFC got its start in the 90s, and this is back when strikers were still very much a thing as opposed to grapplers. If somebody practicing Taekwondo was in that K1 or Pancrase, they usually did not last long.
As you'd expect, Dude Bro is able to use that to good effect against the elves. But that's mostly because the elves cannot really, aren't quite as strong as basic humans. Oh yeah, also, our world is referred to as the Grim World because reasons. Let's see, what else do they have in that book? See, the thing is, there was a lot of cool concepts, like the elf cars run on... Oh, yeah, wow, that was an SJ Dub book, now that I think of it, or at least the 90s equivalent. Because, like, the elves don't use gasoline or oil, they use alcohol for their cars and wind farms for their cities. With 30s level technology, which I don't think is possible.
Well, 30s level technology, sort of possible, although that being said, using alcohol is... Okay, here's the thing. I will actually go to bat for alcohol, but I'm not under any illusions whatsoever that alcohol is more efficient than gasoline. It's not. I can produce a 19-page term paper showing you the basic chemical breakdown and burn rates of both and prove that it's not more energy efficient at all. Wind farms for something back then, yeah, you sort of could do that. Remember, you're not running anything high-powered. You're probably not even running air conditioning, because air conditioning came after the 30s. Essentially, what you're needing to power are lights, medical equipment, fans, and that's really about it.
Now, they do have basic kind of like a magical TV, though. So they do have that, but I don't think it runs on electricity. I think it actually runs on magic. So I guess that works. And they don't actually have planes. Not really, anyway.
Well, yeah, they wouldn't be able to make... Here's the thing that... Okay, they're allergic to iron and steel. Congratulations, you can't have an internal combustion vehicle. At least not one of any note. You're not going to be able to run gasoline, because it runs... it's literally an explosive. You need a high pressure containing vessel for that. You need at the very base least aluminum for that.
The book does cover how they can have skyscrapers, though. Basically, they have to wear protective suits in order to interact with steel. Now, one thing that is kind of funny, though, is when they talk about fire prevention stuff or like fireproof stuff, they talk about, oh yeah, just use some asbestos. It's like,
That's what was used back then.
I know, it's just
Make
kind
it
of funny.
right.
It's just kind of funny, though. See, there's a lot of cool ideas in that book, but very poorly done, and also way too sajubby in some places. It's like, you can tell.
You can laugh at this, but I've worked at businesses where chemical fire hazard was very much a thing. So we actually had asbestos blankets in sealed environment, containers.
Oh yeah, because that would have been helpful. It's like, do I want to burn to death or do I want to get cancer?
Well, there is a layer there that will prevent you from, inhaling the asbestos, but if it ever broke out, you'd be really glad you had the asbestos blanket, because there's no fire extinguisher on Earth that's going to stop that fire before it kills you.
Oh, well, getting a little cancer now is not that bad versus being charred to a crisp. I will do an episode 3 discussion eventually, just haven't had a lot of time for it. Alright, so we were able to defeat the Spider Mastermind. Which is a decent enough boss fight. Fairly basic, though.
But they gave the brain boob jiggle physics.
I know, I saw that.
You've won. It's over. You stopped the invasion and closed the portal. But it's come at a price. Argent, Vega, this entire operation. You see, I've watched you work. Come to understand your motivation.
How long did it take to come to understand Rip and Tear?
The only way is to kill them all. Leave nothing behind. And you may be right. But we can't just shut it all down. Without Argent energy, it will be worse. I don't expect you to agree.
You know, Hayden, all you had to do was just build a bunch of solar power satellites and everything would be fine. But no.
I am not the villain in this story. I do what I do because there is no choice.
Oh, that's what the villain would say, wouldn't it, Hayden?
Our time is up. I can't kill you, but I won't have you standing in our way. Until we see each other again.
In the sequel, The Search for More Money.
Merchandising, merchandising, merchandising.
Well, they did make a Doomslayer action figure for like $300. Thanks, Bethesda. You can just make one that was like 20. How hard is it to make a 3¼ inch Doomslayer action figure? Let's see. Scary, the whole idea of it being the opposite part. So I wonder if Samuel Hayden's can even be in Doom Eternal. I've seen some concept art where you just see like his body completely destroyed, so he might not have a point.
Well, he's going to lose that particular item.
Yeah, he kind of has to. And clearly, despite all the crap he just spouted, it didn't work because, 60% of the Earth taken over by the demons. Oops. Way to go, Heidi. Way to go. Oh, you ever look at like the credits of these games? It's like there's like a whole army of people working on these things, Whereas it used to be a room with like 4 guys. It kind of makes you wonder though, like, how were those really small teams back in the day able to do all that?
Very gifted programmers, very gifted artists, very gifted minds in general. You can still do that to this day, but here's the thing. Designing your own game engine versus taking an extant engine and working off that, there's a big workload difference.
Because I guess like the original id just did all of their own concept art and stuff like that.
Yeah, you had Adrian Carmack, who pretty much handled all the art.
It's just kind of interesting to see, though, how gaming has changed to this point. Really, Doom 2016 for me, this is like the 5th time I played the game, so yeah. It has, if this is the first time, when you play it for the first time, it's like, oh my god, it's the greatest thing ever. They really played this safe. Like, this was played so safe, it's not even funny. They wanted to be a little more... I can see what they wanted to do, but I can guarantee you that Bethesda really kept trying to rein them back a little bit, Because this is still very much sort of a modern game versus anything classic. It's really kind of interesting. It's sort of like a hybrid between, like a game you would have found around the 2010s. And the big difference between this and something more modern is it doesn't have constant cutscenes. So... yeah, it's still good.
Cutscenes wouldn't fit. It still has cutscenes, but making it like a modern game completely, it would not fit. It would just 30 minutes of we're going to dump exposition at you. Yeah, that clown shoe, man, just does not fit.
Well, here's hoping Doom Eternal actually does well, so like Bethesda doesn't invent Doom Youngblood. Because they just want to do that so badly. So, that was Doom 2016. I gotta say, it still holds up to a degree. I don't think this is nearly as memorable as the original. I think this will be forgotten a lot sooner than the original, or even Doom 3. Because it still feels kind of generic. I think the best thing... Wait, go on.
I guarantee it will, for the simple fact that no mods. What keeps Doom alive is the community.
I think really the only thing that this really contributed to the Doom lore is the Doomslayer concept. Because that took, Doom Guy from being like, the big guy when it comes to first-person shooter characters and made him into a meme. So I kind of like that to a degree. Because it makes him like, oh yeah, the Doomslayer can take on Korn and win. I kind of like that. The music was quite good. Mick Gordon did an amazing job, and I think, honestly, if anything, I get the feeling that like the song "Rip and Tear" and BFG Division will probably outlive this game, especially once Doom Eternal comes out. If Doom Eternal is as good as we all hope it is.
My thing is, Mick Gordon did a good job here, but somebody hand that bastard electric guitar. He wants to shred.
Yeah, probably. Alright, so I am General Lotz.
I'm Ranick.
And we can wish you good Doom Eternal, whatever makes you happy. Oh, and